It is Friday, October 17, 2014. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to recapitulate, and otherwise restate everything that happened at yesterday's Apple, iPad, and Mac event.
Everything?
The iMore show. Everything, Ren.
I'm sorry, I totally messed up your intro there.
Even Stephen Colbert. Joining me today, we have Serenity Caldwell live from the West Coast. How are you, Serenity?
I am great, Renee. I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Is that the phrase?
It is.
Yeah, that.
Also joining us, we have, from the East Coast, Peter Cohen.
That's right, we're bi-coastal this week. Hi.
We're going to cover everything from sea to shining sea.
Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, hey, Siri.
Oh. This is why you are so widely loved and adored, Peter. So, Apple event yesterday, it started off with Tim Cook giving a little bit of time to the iPhone, a little bit of time to the iWatch, right, Apple Watch, I'm still doing that. Just basically going over what happened last event, and then we dove into Craig Federighi doing his Superman WWDC 2-minute recap. But there was really, I mean, we saw Yosemite, but I don't think there was nothing new, was there, Peter?
With Yosemite, no, nothing really jumped off the page at me that was something that we didn't know before. And I wouldn't have expected it because, you know, people have had the Yosemite public beta in their hands since the summertime. So everybody's had a good chance to explore it now and figure out what it can do.
And we also heard iOS 8.1, Ren, which is going to unlock the potential of Yosemite.
Yes, unlock the potential of Yosemite / here is the bug fix wherein we acknowledge that things were wrong with iOS, and we want to address those. Also, iCloud Photo Library made its official debut. Since we've been talking about it since June, and it's appeared on about half of the people's devices already. Now it's officially out, guys. Well, as of Monday. As of Monday, it's out.
Yosemite shipped that day, which is the same thing that happened last year. iOS 8.1 is shipping Monday, but you need iOS 8.1 for continuity, so it's still like this weird little gap in the universe.
Yeah, well, you can sort of, at least according to Allie, who I trust with my life, or at least my electronics, you can sort of enable continuity on iOS 8.0.2, but it's not going to be as fun or full-featured without 8.1. From what I understand.
Yeah, and I don't think there was anything else in 8.1. It was like, we're giving you 8.1, and it's going to do the stuff that comes with the stuff we told you at WWDC.
Yay! Yeah, I remember iCloud Photo Library. There's something next to iCloud Photo Library where it was like, oh, let's drop some bombs. But now it escapes me. So I'm just going to say that iCloud Photo Library was my big excitement there. It's like 8.1, I mean, we knew that was coming. There's a beta.
All right, so we'll do a proper Yosemite review podcast next week because Peter has written so many of the words about it.
A gigantic explosion. Maybe not Syracuse level, but certainly Cohen level in its intensity.
And Rene did yeoman's work on that. I can't take single credit for that. He wrote a lot of the words too.
Well, there are some people for whom a Syracuse review is just too much review, so we were hoping to fill the gap between.
Fill the intermediary.
Yes, between haiku and Syracuse.
Yeah, therein is where we live.
That's a very important bridge.
I think so, because I love John's reviews, and I'm going to read them cover to cover, but there's probably some people who want to read something short, and I'll say it's, Peter sweet before they get to the Old English poetry.
For sure.
All right, so then we got into the new iPads, and this is where I still don't know what to think, Ren. So most of the time was spent on the new iPad Air 2. I loved the way they introduced it. Let me say that again. I loved it. We had the pencil from last year, and a laser beam came out and just cut the top off that. And then I guess the meaning of that was, hey, it's even thinner. It's thinner than a pencil now.
I thought it was really funny, the video, and then afterwards, I can't remember who. I think it was either The Verge or it was someone on Medium being like, oh my God, Apple is destroying this poor pencil in the name of product reveals. Which I found pretty hilarious. Yeah, the iPad Air 2 is actually really impressive, which makes the absolute non-update to the Retina Mini all of that more sad to me. But like before we get into details specifically on the Air, I want to say like Apple has officially decided to go back to a numbering scheme with the iPads after trying to weasel their way around that for a while. And on one hand, well, I hate numbers, and I really hate iPad Air 2 and iPad Mini with Retina display 2. That's a lot of title for one product. But you know, Apple also has decided that they want to keep several years of this product on the shelves at once. And with the MacBook Pro or the iMac, you know, you're just dealing with the current generation. You're dealing with the current generation in several models and price points, but you're still just dealing with the current generation.
There was a problem, though. I mean, when they did the new iPad in 2012,
the new iPad with Retina display.
Yeah, you could not find accessories, though. You would type in a new iPad cases, and there was no way that could ever resolve. It was the worst period, name, period, ever, period.
Well, and that's the problem, right, is that the iPad, the numberless names make sense if you're more or less keeping the form factor the same and just selling the most recent model. But because Apple wants to sell multiple models and continue to sell multiple models, they need an actual naming schema that tells customers and users, hey, this is the best one. This is the last year's model. This is one from 2 years ago.
How to figure out which one you have.
There's a roadmap, and on one hand, that's a little crazy, right? Because Apple used to be we have 4 products. It's cool. We don't number our products. They're used to, as I recall, many skits making fun of people STGT50 and now we have things like iPhone 5S and iPad Retina Mini with Retina display 2. So it's a fine line to walk. I understand why they made the change, and I'm personally, as a journalist, I am happy they made the change because it makes my job a little bit easier. But I do look at that chart, and I linked that on Twitter, sort of the chart of all of the iPad models that are currently available. That's a little bit of a daunting chart for your average user to be like, I don't know which one I need. And granted, that's what the Apple stores are for. That's why you go to an Apple store and talk to a specialist, sort of like walk you through your various options and what would be good for you. And contrary to otherwise belief, you know, specialists are not there just upsell you to the highest possible product. They will actually make sure that, like, oh, you have a budget of like $400, well, and you want to do video games and Final Cut stuff or movie stuff on your iPad. Well, here are your options. You know, like, they don't automatically be like, oh, you have $400, let's buy you the absolute most expensive thing you could possibly buy. But yeah, I'm a little I'm really excited that the barrier point or the price point to entry is so low on iPads right now, because I think it opens up iOS to a lot of people and lots more tablets, even if those tablets are on the base end of the spectrum. On the other hand, again, more models means more confusion, and I'm so sorry, developers, you have to support the A5 chip. That is a nightmare.
Yeah, you're going to have to sell all these, Peter. How's that going to work?
Yeah, you know, it presents an interesting quandary for a store like mine because we have very limited shelf space. We are one of our retail locations. We have 2 retail locations, and one of them is actually pretty small. We don't have the floor space to show off all of Apple's products now, so we kind of have to pick and choose which ones we're actually going to show. For example, we've got a table where we've got a Mac Pro set up, but that means that the Mac Mini has to go somewhere else. Right now, we're using a table to show off one iPad Mini and one iPad Air, and that's about it. So I don't think we're going to have every product out on the floor, and I don't even think that we're going to stock every product. I think that we're probably just going to keep in stock the stuff that we expect to sell the most of. And this past year has been kind of interesting because, of course, when the iPad Air shipped, Apple continued to offer the 4th generation iPad alongside. We've actually kept stock of the 4th gen iPad along with the iPad Air, because we do get customers coming in looking for a bargain or looking looking to spend less than $500 for a full-sized iPad, and that's an attractive offer to them because it's a very good machine. It works great, does everything that they need it to do. It's just not the latest and greatest thing. So it does present some interesting quandaries, but I'm inclined to agree with Ren in that what am I going to do? Hashtag Numbergate? No
more gate.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so let's break down some of these models. We have the top of the line iPad Air now, and the improvements are great. The screen is laminated finally. Our long national nightmare of an air gap between the iPad's display and its sizer is gone. So the pixels, instead of being below the glass, look like they're part of the glass. That's terrific. It is thinner. It is lighter. Apple always they talk about the thinness, but the thinness really makes it lighter so you can hold it for longer. And it's got an Apple A9X processor, so it's got even more graphics power. It's hundreds of times, well, not hundreds of times, but it's significantly more powerful. This is a pretty awesome iPad Air, Ren.
Yep, pretty significant for sure. The camera features are the ones that actually impressed me, and that I am very not an iPad camera person. I mean, I've said this on the show before. That's just not.
We lost Ren for a minute. Hopefully she'll come back soon. It's got an 8-megapixel camera on it now. It's not quite as good as the iPhone, but they're making it a full camera citizen.
Yeah, and based on the photos that Phil Schiller was showing yesterday at the event, it looks like it's a pretty impressive device for capturing photos. Ren and you and me, we've all made fun of people who use the iPad at events like birthday parties or even rock concerts to take images. But the fact of the matter is that the iPad can actually be a pretty serious photographic and video tool when it's in the right hands. We showed that at CES this past year.
Yep.
Apple's got plenty of examples, plenty of use cases posted to its website of professional videographers and professional photographers who use iPads for various things. So I'm not going to discount it altogether. The idea of having a 10-inch or 8-inch viewfinder is incredibly powerful when it's in the right hands. But it's nice to see the iPad maybe not on a level playing field with the iPhone 6, but dramatically improved in that respect, because quite frankly the iPad's camera has been second rate for a very long time, so it's nice to see them notch it up.
Yeah, did we get you back, Ren? Not yet. Peter, the other thing that impressed me is the GPUs going into these iPads now. Google just announced their Nexus 9 yesterday, and it's got a Tegra chipset that Geekbench said was measuring I think 2011 Mac Pros or something. And now we've got the A9X in the iPad Air 2, which that hockey stick graph for GPU performance was ridiculous.
A8X actually, not A9X. But yeah, no, it should give you pause if you're still working with a first or second generation iPad to show how much better performance you're going to get out of the new system than you would before. And where that really is exciting is not just in games. I mean, obviously Metal, has practical applications for games that are very exciting. But when it comes to actually tapping into the compute power of that graphics processing subsystem and all the other stuff that the A8X can do, we're seeing Apple continue to improve the iPad Air as an actual professional workstation, something that you can do really serious work on, whether it's content creation or data manipulation or whatever. It's not a toy. It's not just something trivial to be discarded after a while. These are serious machines for people who are doing serious work.
Sorry, Ren, we lost you when you were talking about the cameras. We still lost Ren.
There we go. Hold on. It freezes for moments at a time, and then my tethering connection wasn't working. That's so sad.
Sorry, cameras.
Cameras are problems. All right. iPad Air power performance, very cool. I think size, which again, here's on the iPad that makes me so sad. Is that my mini? Like the mini has been my size for a couple of years. I like the mini. I like the 7.9-inch screen size, and this year Apple was basically like, yeah, we're not going to update the mini. We're going to put a Touch ID sensor on it. We're going to ship it in gold, but otherwise it's the exact same model as last year. I'm like, but I want the 8X. I want better cameras. I just don't want it in a 10-inch screen size. Why, Apple? Why are you doing this?
Yeah,
the answer is probably
why?
On a time, and they said a battery that's squeezed in a 7-inch mini play nice with their 8X processor for that design slash feats of engineering. And they didn't want to do a repeat of the iPad 3, the original iPad 3, where they made it like slightly thicker than the iPad 2, and there was a whole hullabaloo about that. And I imagine if they made a slightly thicker iPad mini, people would be outraged because, oh, it's a smaller device and you're making it thicker. How dare you? So I'm assuming the reasons behind keeping the mini as is were not just let's just get a couple $100 out of these fools. But it still saddens me because I'm like, Apple, an iPad mini, like 128 gigs, cellular, all of the stuff, and now I think I have to buy an iPad Air, and I don't like traveling with an iPad Air, even if it's like super skinny. Like the iPad Air is practically the size of my MacBook Air. If I'm carrying the iPad Air, I might as well not take my laptop, which is an option, but still, I like the pairing.
So I wonder too. I traveled for the first time without an iPad this time because I have the iPhone 6 Plus, and I just put all the TV shows and movies on that. Took it on the plane. It was fine. It was still big, to use on a plane. The iPad Mini is not that much bigger. I haven't been using my iPad Mini a lot. I've been using my Air still to read comic books and watch TV at home. But I wonder if Apple is trying to wait and see what happens with the bigger iPhones, and if they do cannibalize the Mini a little bit. And because the iPhones are much higher margin than the Mini, they make more money when they sell iPhones than they do when they sell iPad Minis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I really dislike it because it seems to go contrary to Tim Cook's, the right device for the right space speech, and he gave that at the end, where he's like, sometimes you want to do this, sometimes you want to do that. Well, you know what? When I want to carry around a portable iOS device, I want it to be 6 inches or less because I need it to fit in my hand and my pockets. But when I want to use a tablet, I really do want to use a 7-inch tablet. I have no desire to carry around a 10-inch tablet and a tiny laptop. And I still, at this point, need a tiny laptop for my day-to-day. I can do it. Hi, Federico. I know Vatishi can do it all on an iPad, and I probably could do it all on an iPad if I really wanted to. Most of our tools are equipped for that, but I like my tiny MacBook Air. I like my tiny Mac or my tiny Mini, and fist shaking Apple. I understand why you did this, and I still don't like it.
Serenity Caldwell, patron saint of tiny things.
Yes, I like tiny things, except for that. The iPhone 6 is okay. I don't need an iPhone 5 sized device.
So one of the things that was really interesting to me is they kept, Serenity mentioned this earlier. They have the iPad Air 2 starting at $500, like every iPad ever has. The iPad, I don't know if it's the iPad Retina Mini 2 or the iPad Mini 3. I'm totally confused about that now. And also why 3 is better than 2, even though the processor is not as. Anyway.
Yeah.
All that aside. They kept around the last year's iPad Mini Retina at cheaper, but then the original iPad Mini at $50, even cheaper than that. Not $100, but $50, and that strikes me as really odd because, like you said, it keeps the A5 chipset around to haunt developers even longer. So with iPod Touch too, and it creates like Peter. Will people really? Is $50 really a saving when you lose like the Retina display and the A7 chipset?
For some people, it absolutely is. How many people, though, is the question. My experience has been that, if anything, it gives people, giving people price options like that is an opportunity to upsell them. Yes, you can spend this much on it, but for $50 more, you get a much more capable machine. So, instead of people grumbling about comparing the cost of this to a Kindle Fire or to another device, Apple's offering the spectrum of choices, and some of the choices are going to intentionally be not necessarily inadequate, but less than optimal for most people. But it gives them the illusion of choice. Well, not the illusion of choice. It gives them legitimate choice, but it helps them understand where their money is best invested in these devices. So from that perspective, I don't think it's a bad strategy.
No, one choice is bad and one choice is good. No, it makes perfect sense. Like, again, having Peter's is working in a store, and I have worked at an Apple store before, and like having that lower price point gets people into the door to start looking at them, being like, oh, I can buy an iPad for only $250. And then when they start talking to the specialist can be like, yeah, well, if you have the extra 50, you definitely want this one. And especially, you're talking about the iPad mini not only has the legacy A5 chipset, but we're talking about that's the only iOS device right now that is not Retina capable. You have to, like, if you're supporting the A5, you are supporting a non-Retina device, which is really not so much fun for asset developers.
So Apple made the case hard for despite some people's objections, not looking at Serenity too difficult. It's too hard. For iPad photography, they said it is the viewfinder. They have 2 microphones now, so you can record better than ever. Last year here's my thing with the iPad. For me, it's never about the iPad. It really is about what the story Apple tells with it. And the original iPad was sort of, it has to have a purpose to exist. But the iPad 2 was, we believe. Technology alone is not enough. iPad 3 was Retina. iPad 4 was Retina doesn't suck. iPad Air was your verse. Like, this is what you can do. And iPad Air 2, they didn't really tell a story yet, so I'm waiting to see that. But they did show, for example, Pixelmator for iPad, and they did show Replay, I think was the name of the video.
Replay, yep.
Yeah. That, I mean, yes, it's creative, but again, they're hitting that they're doing this sort of mainstream productivity thing, which people roll their eyes when I say that. But what I mean is they're taking productivity that used to be stuck in an office cubicle and letting you put it in your backpack and bring it into the forest. And I think that's pretty cool, and I think that is how they're going to position the iPad Air 2.
Yeah, I mean, the based on the demos that they were performing on stage yesterday, it's very clear to me that they're saying, hey, the iPad Air, if you're the type of person who likes to touch and interact with your media, which, that is very much the case, editing a movie on these things is really awesome. And granted, it doesn't yet have the full-featured power of a desktop, but they're basically being like, hey, if you like editing photos and movies and creative stuff, this is now a very, very good choice in terms of processing power. You don't need a Mac Pro. I mean, you might need a Mac Pro for some things, but hey, look at me. I can edit 5K, a 5K pixel picture on my iPad instantly and take away things in the picture instantly. Like, that's a huge step up from the original iPad, which is kind of like, you can read books on it. And we have a couple of apps. What was it when they were doing the big graph of the A processor over the years? Like the A8X is something like 126 times faster than the original iPad just 4 years ago. And like, I know these things. Internally, I know these things. I write about this stuff every year. But that kind of a number still blows my mind. Where it's like 4 years. That's the time that like most people go through college, right? Like 4 years is not a long period of time. And Apple has essentially graduated the iPad from like this poor dinky little freshman to like a power machine, like ready to go out into the business enterprise world and kick some metal butt or something like that. My metaphors are not perfectly on par at 7:32 in the morning, but like it's really, really impressive what they've been able to do, and it signals pretty much that like, oh, the iPad's not just a hobby market. Like, we really want this to be sort of an option for a different kind of computing user, and also if you want to play games on it and not be super fancy, you can do that too, because metal's pretty cool.
Peter, if someone comes into you and asks, should I get an iPad Air or should I get a MacBook Air? Does this change anything in your answer?
Not at all. Not at all. I still think that fundamentally, and this is just me talking here, but I think fundamentally that the iPad and the Mac are different user experiences. And I do get a lot of customers who come in the store and ask that very question. I was thinking about an iPad Air. I was thinking about a MacBook. You know, I don't necessarily want another computer. Can I do everything that I can on the laptop, or can I do everything on the iPad that I could do on a laptop? And you know, a lot of that is just customer education and having them understand. Look, you know, you're dealing with a fundamentally different user experience. You're dealing with, you know, one is a touch-based interface. The other one is, you know, a mouse or trackpad-driven interface. It's a cursor-based interface. They work differently. You know, the fact that one has a keyboard and the other one doesn't, that you would have to buy an extra accessory that's going to cost you anywhere from $50 to $100, depending on which one you get, to be able to actually type stuff. And then you're still going to be touching the screen constantly to do things. You know, a lot of times I can and will talk people out of getting an iPad if I think that the MacBook or another computer, another Mac computer, is going to be better suited for what their particular needs are. Then again, you know, there are the people who walk in and say, hey, look, all I do is I read email, I shop at Target, I you know, surf the web every so often. Those are prime candidates for the iPad. And, you know, for those consumers, now they've got this wealth of options to choose from. You know, certainly the iPad Air 2 is going to fit a specific niche. You know, people who, first of all, are looking for the latest and greatest, and a lot of us, whether we're regular consumers or power users, always want to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck. And given that the iPad Air 2 is the exact same price as, you know, the previous generation high-end iPads, there's no reason to talk anybody out of spending the $500 or $600 or whatever it is that they want. The interesting thing for me was what Apple did with storage differentiation, where they've repeated the same thing that they've done on the iPhone. So you've got this 16 gigabyte entry-level model for $500, and then it jumps up to 64 gigs. So they've eliminated the 32 altogether, but they've given people a much stronger incentive to upsell to the middle tier. The middle tier model for the iPad. I think that that's very interesting, and I'm suspecting it's going to be accretively beneficial to Apple's bottom line for doing that. I think more people are going to be getting the 64 than have gotten the 32 in the past.
And we've seen 16 can be painful.
16 is terrible. I'm so mad at Apple for keeping the 16 gigabyte version around. As Lex Friedman was joking, he's like, who screwed up and got way too much 16 gigabyte flash RAM in the supply chain, because they're paying for it right now. But seriously, I know it's part of Apple's strategy to upsell, and it does make sense. I mean, come on, we always want someone to jump to the next biggest device. And the 64 gigs, that's a lot of storage for that price point. It's very nice, but it's still it's frustrating, because it means that when you're walking in to get a device, you're almost always spending more money than you actually want to. And I'm like, that's never really been Apple, you know. Apple's kind of been you get what it says on the tin kind of company, and now they've become a little bit more of the pricing game company, and I don't begrudge them for that, but it's a little bit annoying, because I know I'm going to get that 64 or 128 gigabyte, because, you know, the extra storage space is nice.
Indeed. And also, Peter, gold.
Gold. Yeah, well, you know, the gold phones were so enormously popular when they made their debut last year with the iPhone 5S that I'm not entirely surprised that Apple's decided to distribute the same color scheme out to every other iOS device. So you know, it is what it is. I'm not a big fan of gold. I understand that a lot of people like them, and I understand your reasons for liking them, even though I think that you're wrong. No, just kidding. But you know, it's fun to see. It's fun to see that large a device coated in gold. It's kind of I personally find it a bit gaudy and ostentatious, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It was a lot of gold when we saw it in person, and it doesn't look bad. I mean, that was the original fear, that much gold was just too much gold. But it's nice that people who want to can get matching kit now. I guess.
Yeah, you know what, I like, and this color gold is pretty. You know what? I really like this color gold. It's very pretty. It's very it fits very well. Although I will say that Apple is a terrible tease because there are a couple of graphics on their website that make it look like there might be a gold back with a black front, and that is not true. You have to get the gold and the white.
There's no Bruins iPad.
No,
Sadly,
and that makes me
heart
sad.
breaks. Yeah, I like my black faces. I think as much as I like this gold phone, I think I have to go back to a black phone next time around. But it does offer choice for people who want it.
All right, so before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to tell you about Swirl. Swirl is a app. You can get it from the App Store. You can download it. It's SWORL. And it's a photo framing app. It's available on the iPhone right now. It's free. It allows you to print, frame, and deliver beautifully wrapped photos quickly and easily from your iPhone, and they say in less than 3 minutes. I tried it out. There were so many options. I actually took a long time, not because it was a hard process, because I wanted to see every possibility that I could and every combination and try out how different photos would look. But it was a really easy process to go through. They have high-quality frames. They come in four colors. There's both wall and desk versions, and you can frame photos from 4x6 to as large as 16x20. There's affordable prices. I was actually surprised at how cheap they were. They start at $19.99, and what's more, you can get 20% off if you use the discount code iMore. You can get something printed, framed, delivered to you, gift wrapped with gift messaging for just $16.99. And it will soon be the season. Tisn't the season quite now, but soon will be the season.
Almost.
It is almost the season. And Ren, this was pretty cool because Apple is increasingly not doing the photo.
Yeah, they're moving away from the photo books. The photo presents.
And I know some people we have such good cameras in the iPhone now that I took a picture of my godkid dressed up as Nightwing. He is so happy with that photo. I've sent it to him, but I'm gonna get him a picture of that he can put up somewhere because come on.
Yeah, I mean, photos are still really, really, it's nice to have all of our photos on our device and that we're not carrying around wallet-sized photos anymore. But there's something to be said about a nice big framed photo that sits on your wall and commemorates an experience or an event or a specific time and place. We are inherently nostalgic people, and as much fun as floating LCD photo frames are, and using your iPad as a photo frame, sometimes we just want the paper. I'll have to check this place out. It sounds cool.
Yeah, and people in offices, they know when they go in that your kids still aren't 2 years old. You need to update that stuff. People need accurate assessments of
They need to know when baby lost their first tooth, or I don't know, the water cooler explosion will just fall apart.
If your kid has graduated college and they still look 3 years old because of the photo frame on your desk, you can fix that now.
Oh, that was my dad's problem for many years. He carried around a photo of me at 7. Ugh.
Don't be that parent. So
don't be that dad.
So you can try the free Swirl framing app right now in the App Store. SWORL. Just search for it in the App Store. Download it. You can also go to getswirl.com. GETSWORL.com. Use promo code iMore. Save 20%. Get a photo that will make your memories manifest for a lifetime. Thank you, Swirl. All right, so we got to meet Apple's new Supreme Allied Commander of Secrecy yesterday, Esteban Calderto.
I think you mean Red Delicious.
Red Delicious, sorry. Yes, Red Delicious. He spoke to, what was Craig? Green?
I think he was Granny Smith. I know that Tim Cook was Chairman Honeycrisp, and that's the one that stood out to my mind.
Tim Cook was Chairman Honeycrisp, and
sounds like a serial supervillain. Well, I have to go meet with Chairman Honeycrisp to make sure that our oaths are in prime order.
That video was delightful, though. I mean, we saw them have this crazy handshake in order to get in. The Eddie Q does not have his groove back. Eddie Q and handshakes. He's not a dancey guy. I really liked this ridiculousness. I mean, I felt it was always riding the line between going too far and being an awkward Microsoft joke presentation. But Apple does the dad jokes so well, where they're like, yes, we know these are incredibly cheesy. That's okay. We're just having fun with it. You just got to go with us.
enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride because afterwards you're going to be stepping off and you're going to be a little lightheaded and you're going to be like, okay. Okay.
Yeah, man immediately did a Chairman Honeycrisp video, of course.
And it was great. It was so funny.
But they used that, Peter, to show off iWork, which is, interesting. They made a presentation about how Apple was improving secrecy about things like the new mothership actually being a mothership.
Yes, indeed. Having a little bit of fun at their own expense, which I'm happy to see. I agree with Ren that the jokes definitely pushed the envelope on corny, but it's nice to see them having a little bit of fun at their own expense, and we've seen this more and more. I mean, Craig Federighi and discussing the nomenclature for Yosemite at WWDC made a joke about going to Weed, California, and how much the marketing team wanted to stay there for a while. So, we're definitely seeing a lightness about the way that Apple treats itself that I think is really refreshing because, nobody wants a stuffed shirt, and that's not Apple. So good to see them put a spin on it that's a little bit self-effacing.
All right, so before we get to the 5K monster in the room, Peter, you actually got to hear the words New Mac Mini on a stage.
I did, and at first I thought I had a stroke. I'm like, do I smell toast? Are my words slurring?
It was like when Syracuse heard the word Swift on stage. It was the same fugue moment.
It really was. I was so excited. This is the moment that I've been waiting for more than 2 years now, and I was actually delighted that the Mac Mini looks like a Mac Mini should. The people had sort of let their pens, their 3D CAD design software go free earlier this year, and people had speculated that the Mac Mini was going to be a little Taurus. Some donut-y looking version of the Mac Pro, and I'm glad that they kept the form factor. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel with the Mac Mini. What they did need to do is refresh it with better hardware inside, and that's exactly what they've done. So the Mac Mini is a cool piece of kit because really what it is it's a desktop computer that borrows heavily from the same parts bins that Apple uses for its laptop machines. And Apple's previous version of the Mac Mini was roughly analogous to the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the standard MacBook Pro, not the Retina display. This brings the Mac Mini more into MacBook Pro territory. It's either a 2.6 or a 2.8 gigahertz processor that's more or less the similar specs to the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Intel Iris graphics. But what Apple's done is really kind of interesting because they've kind of taken the iMac approach to iterating the different models, and they've come up with a new $499 model. It's $100 less than before. The mid-range now is $100 more than the base model was, so $499, $699, and that $499 model is roughly analogous to a MacBook Air. It's a 1.4 gigahertz machine with 4 gigs of RAM. It still uses a conventional hard drive inside. It's still a Mac Mini, but it gives people who may be interested in be interested in getting a Mac, but may even find $599 or $699 to be too much, an opportunity to get in the door with a Mac for a little bit less. And you know what? People are looking at the specs on that going, wow, 1.4 gigahertz dual-core i5, that's not really, a very powerful machine. It's good enough for most people. It really is. Because if you think about how many people use a 13-inch MacBook Air or an 11-inch MacBook Air and have absolutely no complaints about the way that it runs, they're in the same boat with this new $499 Mac Mini. Then on the high end, Apple took the Mac Mini, put in a faster processor, and included Fusion Drive in it. So it's going to be nice and peppy. Here's the interesting thing, though. They don't include server in it. That $999 model has had OS X server pre-installed on it for some time now. Now, I mean, if you want server, you can download it for $20 from the Mac App Store. It's not a big deal. But now there's actually a premium performance Mac Mini where there never really has been before, which is a very exciting change, and it looks like a good little machine.
So
yeah,
they didn't say Haswell. It's not. It clearly is Haswell though. It's not Broadwell. But Peter, I don't see any downside to that.
No, Broadwell was never going to happen for the Mac Mini, at least not this year. The Broadwell chips that Apple needs for any of its systems just aren't out yet. The initial release of Broadwell chips this fall is with what Intel calls its Core M processors. They are system-on-a-chip processors. They're suitable for 2-in-1s. They're suitable for tablets. They're not suitable for something that needs the processing power of a MacBook Air or a Mac Mini. So that would push these devices into 2016 2015 if Apple were to wait for that. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So Apple took, off-the-shelf parts that it can get now. Haswell has been out for a year and almost a year and a half now. It's proven technology. There are a lot of fourth-generation Intel Core chips out there to choose from, as Apple puts it. There's no real downside to this. It's a nice refresh. You also get Thunderbolt 2. You get 802.11 AC. I don't really see a lot of downsides to these new machines. I'm really happy with what Apple's done for the Mac Mini. One thing to note, though, is that when the Mac Mini was redesigned, Apple did get rid of FireWire 800. So Apple's last FireWire machine is gone. It's out the door.
Poor FireWire.
We knew you well. So, Ren, the lack of Broadwell is also probably why we didn't get any, nice Broadwell Retina tiny laptops this year.
The tiny laptops, yeah. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that it just wasn't going to happen this year. In part, you know what? The most telling thing on stage was Tim Cook saying, "We updated the MacBook Airs earlier this year." And a little part of my brain was like, oh, yeah, I guess they did do a speed bump to the MacBook Airs. And that's kind of, I think, their way of saying, hey guys, it's not like we're letting the MacBook Air stagnate. We updated the thing. We just don't necessarily have the time/energy/ability to cram a chip that isn't even officially shipping yet into a computer and still deliver you the battery life that you want. And I mean, they've shown from the new iPad that battery life is very important. And given the MacBook Air, I am on a MacBook Air that has fewer than 3 hours of battery life because I had the original 2010 generation. And boy, oh boy, would I love to have a 10-hour MacBook Air and a Retina display. But I don't know yet if those two things are mutually compatible. And especially, sorry?
Coveted it. We wanted it.
I did covet. I wanted it so badly, and I think I have to. I think I have to buy a new computer because this one doesn't work with handoff. And I'm really like, I want to wait. This computer is fine. But it doesn't have the handoff features. So I think I'm going to have to take the plunge and buy a new MacBook Air.
Yeah, speaking of handoff, there's been an interesting last-minute shift that I didn't realize. Earlier, it looked like 2011 machines were going to support handoff, but now Apple is saying that handoff needs a Mac that was built in 2012 or later. So I don't know. It's upset a few people I know, people who I've heard over Twitter and other social media. So
confused.
they think it's working.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And it's not.
Go ahead, Ren.
Go ahead. As it's not very widely advertised. There's a page that we can put in the show notes or something. There's a page that Apple has that's how to upgrade to OS X Yosemite, and within that it gives you a full breakdown of what's okay and what's not okay. Computers are with canned off and continuage. Oop, have you lost me? Am I here?
You're back.
Hello?
You're back.
Yay. I was just saying, there's no real signage in Yosemite when you start it up, when you try and do any of these things, that handoff doesn't work. It's just conspicuously absent. And for some things, all right, so, we've seen this in the past where OS X doesn't always give all the features to all of the different devices. Fine. But in the past, it's been minor things, like graphics being slightly less transparent or something like that. Never a feature. Yeah, exactly. This is a huge central feature to the OS X Yosemite operating system that a bunch of Macs aren't getting, and it's just the messaging has been very unclear about what Macs get it and what Macs don't.
That's the thing for me is that, and I'm sure Peter that's what he was talking about too, is that it's not that they're not getting it, it's that so many people just don't know. They don't know like why it's. I have a friend yesterday who used to work in IT, and he's like, why is it not working? And I'm like, check for Bluetooth 4.0, and they just. Anyways, well, I'm sure Peter will be all over this at some point.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess right now, and it's going to take a little while to sort out. So I'm hoping that, if you're listening to or watching this podcast, you can be patient with us for a little bit while we try to get the best handle on it, because it has been a moving target, and you expect that throughout the beta process. You expect, I covered the fact that Wi-Fi calling disappeared from the iPhone 5 after iOS 8 was released. During the betas from beta 3 on, if you were a T-Mobile customer using an iPhone 5 with iOS beta 3 or higher, you had Wi-Fi calling, and then it went GM and Wi-Fi calling disappeared. Apple, I asked Apple about this, and Apple said, well, sometimes things change, in beta. And T-Mobile's response was, well, it's really up to the developer to figure out what the spec's going to be for what gets supported and what doesn't. My working assumption is that that's exactly the case, that things changed in beta, that Apple found that there just was some kind of problem with a certain percentage of the population of users with iPhone 5s that made Wi-Fi calling not fully baked for them, and decided to pull the feature rather than have to deal with something that, quite frankly, didn't work right. And it's a painful situation sometimes when you get into that, especially if you've read stuff online that says this will work and then it turns out not to, or if you've actually had that experience, if you've been using the public beta and find that the finished version isn't exactly where you left it when you had the public beta running. It's very difficult for people to sometimes understand that iterating into a release version of software doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get all the same features that you thought you were going to get. Things change, and I'm not trying to be an Apple apologist here. I'm just trying to what's the word here? I guess. Well, well, more than anything, give a realistic expectation of how the software development process works. Going from beta to GM to release doesn't always necessarily mean that everything is going to be continuous. Sometimes stuff gets dropped for whatever reason. Shrug.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to segue into my favorite video from the show, and I don't know why it was my favorite. It was just so awesome. You see the Retina iPhone, and then it spins around, and it goes to the Retina iPads, and they spin around, and it goes to the Retina MacBook Pro, and that spins around. And then this mind-blowing, eye-blasting picture of flowers and a little butterfly show up on screen, and that spins around and then shrinks back, and you see it a Retina, not 4K, but 5K iMac. Peter, I am not lying when I said I wanted to jump into it like it was a Looney Tune.
It was beautiful.
5K, that's so many Ks.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a hell of a screen, and the interesting thing about 5K is that it really kind of pegs Apple's focus on the iMac, and this is only the 27-inch model that we're talking about here that gets the 5K treatment. You can't get a 5K 21.5-inch Mac, which makes sense. It's a premium product. It's premium price, $24.99, so it's $500 more expensive than the next tier down for the 27-inch model. But it's really clearly aimed at content creators who are working in 4K, because 5K gives you the ability to look and edit your 4K image at full resolution, yet still have a palette of clips and timeline and other stuff surrounding you on a screen. Working in Final Cut Pro, for example, still have all that material around you and still be able to work. So this is really a device that's finally developed for people who are working in 4K right now, which is an interesting thing.
What did you think of it, Ren? What was your take?
I want it. No, I thought it was a very, Very impressive machine from Apple. I'm glad they only went at the 27-inch configuration. I mean, that's kind of their past performance, right? Is that they started with a 15-inch only when they went Retina on the laptop end. So it makes sense to kind of like to meet it out, to figure out the problems in the supply chain, and to get everything handled, and then slowly integrate Retina into the lower models. But it's really exciting that this is happening, and the price point is actually very impressive. As you know, as somebody who still has friends in the film industry and has worked in the film industry, like that kind of pricing for a 4 or 5K display alone is pretty good. And then you add a computer on top of that, and not just any computer, not like it's kind of it serves the monitor, but that's about it. But the top of the line Retina iMac, I mean, is comparable in some respects to the Mac Pro. It doesn't have the same core treatment, of course, as the Pro does. But I definitely think it'll make a lot of people reconsider if they were thinking about getting, a Mac Pro, and then I'm going to have to offload with a bunch of 4K third-party screens. Instead, I'm going to get myself a Retina 27-inch iMac, and then I've got this beautiful screen, and the computer's built all in one, and I can supplement with external screens as they come along.
Yeah, you can drive 4K displays from this iMac. What was interesting to me is that
You can drive a 4K display from this iMac.
Yeah, multiple might be problematic.
A 4K, yeah. So right now it's Thunderbolt 2, and Thunderbolt 2 cannot deliver 5K. There's some argument that Dual Link could, but there's shearing and there's all sorts of stuff. Thunderbolt 2 is not ready for 5K. So what Apple did is they made their own custom TCAM chip, which is something that if you're Apple, you can do. I certainly can't do it. Apple can do it. Maybe one day Thunderbolt 3 can do it. So one of the things that I saw was that people right away said, well, where is the Thunderbolt display version of this? And if we go back in time to when Apple introduced the IPS iMac, we had to wait a while before the LED display came out, and then the Thunderbolt display replaced that. So people who have Mac Pros right now were hopeful. Maybe I can just use the new iMac in target display mode the way that the original IPS iMac could be used. But turns out no, because again, there's no cable, there's no Thunderbolt port that can deliver that signal. Then they thought, well, maybe I can just wait till the 5K display comes out. But turns out, Peter, the Mac Pro only has Thunderbolt 2. So even if a theoretical 5K Thunderbolt display comes out, it'll require Thunderbolt 3. So we live in a world now where the Mac Pro just can't get on 5K from Apple.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see what happens over time. The Mac Pro on its own can drive 3K displays. Three 4K displays. What am I saying? So you certainly have no shortage of pixels on there. But the iMac 5K stuff certainly presents a different story. Now, you had mentioned the T-Con, the timing controller. Apple spent a little bit of time digressing on this stuff yesterday, and they don't always give us inside baseball on what they're doing hardware-wise. But this is kind of interesting. The timing controller that they've got inside the 5K iMac actually has an effective bandwidth of 40 gigabits per second. So when Rene's talking about Thunderbolt 2 just can't push 5K, that's what you're talking about right there. It's that reason, because Thunderbolt 2 is 20 gigabits per second. So Apple needed this special timing controller inside the new high-end iMac, the new Retina iMac, simply to be able to push all 14.7 million pixels in that display at once. They're getting into some really sophisticated engineering here, and it makes me think that we're not going to see 5K or stuff like that on the Mac Pro until we're talking about Thunderbolt 3, which is coming next year with Skylake, if I remember correctly.
So, that was a digression, but I saw a lot of people who had bought Mac Pros and were coveting 5K displays sort of get a little bit sad yesterday when they realized. But then a lot of them thought, well, maybe I can re-gift this Mac Pro for an iMac, which is interesting because the Mac Pro used to be top of the line, but we're getting to an age where a fantastic display can make people consider, 2 graphics cards, great, thermal core, great, all these ports, great. Whoa, 5K display.
Well, if you take a
Yeah.
look at it, though, I mean, the iMac and the Mac Pro fundamentally fit into different niches, right? The Mac Pro is a parallel processing monster from its base to its top. You know, it's shaped like a turbine, for God's sake. You know, it's got this unified thermal core. It's got, you know, up to a 12-core processor. It's got these gargantuan AMD graphics processing units that aren't just used for rendering graphics. I mean, as a game system, the Mac Pro is acceptable, but you'll get better frame rates out of a custom-built PC with the latest NVIDIA card in it. Where this thing really comes in handy is if you're doing heavy computational work and stuff that hammers on the compute power specifically of the Mac Pro's hardware. So apps that are optimized for OpenCL, for example, run very fast on the Mac Pro. The iMac, meanwhile, has a conventional off-the-shelf Haswell processor. It's running at a good speed. The Retina iMac has the fastest processor of any product in the iMac line, but it's more of a special purpose device. You know, it's not a parallel processing monster in the same way that the Mac Pro is. It's really designed to push graphics, to push a lot of graphics all at once, to make them look really pretty. It's a high-end content creation workstation for people who are working in digital video, people who are working in digital photography, other people who need to make stuff look pretty and look great are going to really enjoy it. Plus, it's, you know, just it's going to be an amazing machine besides. So I'm sure that Apple's going to sell to a lot of other industry, you know, a lot of other verticals besides just content creators. But for them especially, they're the sweet spot for that Retina iMac. They're the ones who are going to see the most out of it, I think, from any of us.
Yes, Ren. I mean, the screen, the blacks, the colors. My eyes are still blown through the back of my skull.
Yeah, I really don't need an iMac, and I have a screen, and I have no use for that in my house, but I still want it. I want it so badly.
So I ordered one, and then I canceled it. Then I ordered a different variation because I'm trying to figure out which one. Like, I'm not sure which options to take, so I'm going to ask you guys for some help here. I read Marco Armand's piece on what's optimal for Marco iMac, and it was really good. Originally, I went just with the baseline model, and then I reconsidered, and then I went higher end, and it was vacillating between like $3,000 and $4,500 as I moved things back and forth, which is crazy. Peter, what would you suggest? Like, so what I ended up going with so far is I think I put the memory up to 16 gigabytes. I don't think I increased the processor. I went with the 512 SSD because I can add external storage to slow me down if I want to, and I went with I forget, but I optimized it, I think, for speed in the end.
Well, yeah, I'd say going pure SSD would definitely be optimized for speed.
Oh, and the GPU, I upgraded the GPU.
You upgraded the GPU to the M295X?
Yes.
Yeah, the other advantage there is that the M295X has twice the video RAM as the other one. So, you know, that's better certainly going to be better for rendering effects and in Final Cut and doing anything that's very OpenGL intensive. So yeah, no, that's a smart way to do it. I've been thinking about this too because I'm sure that I'm going to be having some configuration questions from my customers in the store. I'm thinking that for most people, and you're a special case, as we all know, Rene, you're special.
In so many ways.
Most people are probably going to be pretty happy with the Fusion Drive that comes standard on that model. Fusion Drive is great. If you're not familiar with Fusion Drive, it's basically a 128 gigabyte SSD made into a 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard disk drive. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the capacity of a hard disk drive with the immediacy of flash and all the stuff that you access on a regular basis. Your operating system, your frequently used applications, your frequently used data remains resident in the remains resident on the SSD part of it. It's only the stuff that goes into long-term storage that ends up on your hard drive, as it were. So you get immediate performance. You get fast swap if you run into any weird memory issues. But that's great. And Apple offers a 3 terabyte Fusion drive for only $150 more. So if you want to stock up your Mac, your iMac with a lot of internal storage, that's probably going to be the way that most people are going to go. That's going to get them the best bang for their buck. Going pure flash is great, but it's an expensive option for most of us. 1 terabyte flash storage would add $800 onto the price of the iMac.
That's Alex Lindsay money, Peter. That's fine.
I know. Yeah, exactly. 16 gigs, I think, is a no-brainer. You absolutely were right to upgrade the memory on that. And did you stick with the 3.5 gigahertz, or did you drop it up to 4.0?
I think I went to 4.0. I have to check because it was very late at night and I was very sleep deprived.
It'll be very interesting to see. That is some fast stuff there. 4 gigahertz quad core i7. So basically a top of the line processor. That's cramming a supercharged V12 in there to be sure.
So we're going to wrap it up because both Serenity and I are getting low on battery, and we have a ton of questions. And I apologize. We'll do a Q&A episode, and I'll keep all these questions so we don't lose them. Peter's going to be reviewing the Mac Mini. I'm going to be reviewing the iMac. Serenity and I are going to be reviewing the iPad. We're also going to be updating our iPad buyer's guide. Peter's going to be updating the Mac buyer's guide because Lord knows the equations they have changed. We're going to have a lot more coverage coming to you throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the month. As we all know, Apple events are just the beginning. It's when things ship. That's going to be fun. And right now I'm waiting for that. One thing I should mention, the iPad, there's no big launch date. The iPad is just going to arrive in stores the way iPods usually do. So you can order online. If you're watching this podcast today, you can order online or anytime thereafter. But stores, you're going to have to check. Peter, any last thoughts?
Lots of cool stuff today. Not everything that we wanted. Allie did a nice piece yesterday rounding up the stuff that was speculated about or that was on our wish list that didn't get announced. But a great end to the year for Apple with lots of cool stuff to go into the winter months with. It just paves the way for a terrific 2015.
Awesome. Ren?
For sure. There are things that we didn't get, but overall, I'm very happy with the new big iPad. I'm really sad about the little mini, and I'm really excited to see where Apple's going with the device for the space. I'm really excited to start playing with continuity once I have a real laptop. Sorry, MacBook Air.
All right. Serenity, if people want to find you, where can they go?
At Settern, SETTERN, on all of the things. And right on iMore.com for all things Mac and iOS.
Awesome. Peter?
On Flarg at all of the things, FLARGH, and of course at iMore.com.
If Allie were here, Allie is actually on vacation. I've heard of these things. She's on vacation. I'm assuming at Hogwarts. I don't know for sure. You could find her at iMuggle, IMUGGLE, and she'll be back with us, I believe, next week. You can find me at Rene Ritchie, and again, just keep it locked on iMore. We have lots more coming. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you for, great show, great event. I'm still sleep deprived. Yeah.
Woo!
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Before I end, I should just once again also thank Swirl. I forgot to do that. Swirl is an app. You get it from the App Store. You just go to SWORL, or you can go to GetSwirl, GETSWORL.com. Download it, pick some photos, make some frames, get some prints, put them on your desk, put them on your wall. You can save 20% if you use the promo code iMore. I tried it. I found it delightful. I think you'll enjoy it too. And it's good to have physical objects around us.
I'm looking forward to trying that.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.